There are three groups of Eldritch Currency: the Ichors and Embers, the Orb of Conflict, and the Eldritch Chaos, Exalted, and Annulment Orbs. I'll show you how they work and how to use them to craft items. Remember, you can practice with everything in this video except Orbs of Conflict on pathofexile.com, which is linked in the video description. Eldritch Ichors and Embers can only be used on uninfluenced or fractured armor pieces. They can't be used on jewelry, weapons or jewels, or unique items of any kind. If used on a synthesized item, they will completely and irreversibly overwrite the synthesis implicits. Ichors and Embers add or replace Eldritch implicits. There are 6 tiers, and the 4 types of Ichors and Embers correspond to the lowest 4. The tiers are Lesser, Greater, Grand, Exceptional, Exquisite, and Perfect. Confusingly, people label them as both Tier 1 through 6, and also Tier 6 through 1. I will simply refer to them by name, but keep this in mind when looking at other resources. Ichors grant Eater of Worlds implicits, and Embers grant Searing Exarch implicits. An item may only have one Eater and one Exarch implicit, so if you use an Eldritch Ember on an item that already has an Exarch implicit, it will reroll that implicit. Generally, you would use either the Lesser, Greater, or Grand versions of both Ichors and Embers until you get your desired implicits. If you want exceptional implicits, it is generally cheaper to use Orbs of Conflict, and if you want exquisite or perfect implicits, they are required. Keep in mind that some implicits are rarer than others, and also that starting at both Greater and Grand, there are some extra mods that can roll that only activate when you are near a boss. The full list of the available implicits and their weights are available on both PoEDB and Path of Exile, linked in the description. Orbs of Conflict can only be used on items with 2 Eldritch implicits. It makes one implicit 1 tier higher, and the other 1 tier lower. It only affects the tiers of the implicits. If a perfect implicit is chosen to increase in tier, it will stay perfect. If a lesser implicit is chosen to decrease in tier, it will be removed entirely. The odds for an implicit to increase or decrease depends on how many tiers higher the other implicit is, with the lower tier implicit being more likely to be upgraded. Pause here for details and examples. As mentioned earlier, Orbs of Conflict are generally used to upgrade implicits to the Exceptional, Exquisite, and Perfect tiers. The best way to do this is to roll your desired mod with a low tier currency like Greater or Grand, use an Exceptional Orb of the opposite type to maximize the tier difference and improve your odds, and then use Conflict Orbs to raise the tier of the desired mod. The best tier to start your desired mod on can change depending on the mod weight and the current prices of the currencies, so I made a calculator to tell you what's best right now. It also has a recap of these instructions. It's linked in the description. The Eldritch Chaos, Exalted, and Annulment Orbs can only be used on items with at least one Eldritch implicit. They act like the regular versions, but only affect an item's suffixes or prefixes, depending on whether the item is dominated by the Eater or the Exarch. To determine this, look at the tiers of the implicits. If the Eater implicit is a higher tier than the Exarch implicit, then the item is dominated by the Eater, and vice versa. If there's only one Eldritch implicit, then the item is dominated by its type. If both implicits are the same tier, neither is dominant, and these orbs will not work. The Eldritch Chaos Orb acts like a normal Chaos Orb, except that it will reroll only an item's suffixes if it is Eater dominant, and reroll only its prefixes if it is Exarch dominant. It doesn't affect the opposite half of the item at all when it is used, meaning that even if you have Eater dominant and have an open prefix, for example, it will never add a prefix. The Eldritch Exalted Orb acts like a normal Exalted Orb, except that it will always add a suffix if the item is Eater dominant, and always add a prefix if the item is Exarch dominant. The Eldritch Annul is the same, except it always removes a suffix if an item is Eater dominant, and always removes a prefix if the item is Exarch dominant. This all means that you can easily craft one half of an item, that is, either its prefixes or suffixes, without affecting the other half. People will generally get 3 good prefixes or suffixes, perhaps with fractured mods, harvest reforges and/or essences, then target one specific mod with the Eldritch Orbs. Getting 2 good mods is possible but increases the cost by a lot. To target a single mod, you can either use Eldritch Chaos Orbs until you find it, or craft a mod that you don't want, Normal or Eldritch Exalt, and if you don't get your desired mod, simply remove the crafted mod, Eldritch Annul, and repeat.